It has been a week since my new single, Welcome Back to Earth, dropped, and you guys had quite a lot of questions about what it was like to make it and my general music making process, so I wanted to answer those in a video today. What were your main inspirations for the song? Oh my goodness. For this song in particular, I ended up taking a lot of inspiration from an artist who I probably talk about a lot. I take so much inspiration from, and that is Overwork, my favorite EDM artist of all time, and particularly his song Move Your Body. I just really like the way that the first drop contrasts with the second drop in that song and the sort of way that those drops kind of change. I really wanted to write a song that had that really thick bass line, but also wasn't relying on things like white noise to sort of exacerbate the effect of this really huge drop. I also love like how clean the vocals are in the processing in that song, and the fact that they're not super spacey. They're very like, you know, and that was something I wanted to try and emulate as well in this song. I was asked, how did you come up with the concept for the song? And I suppose that leads on from the answer of that previous question, because it was a number of different things. Originally, I had a completely different idea for what I wanted to write about, what I wanted the song to be, how I wanted it to sound. And what ended up happening was I just developed something completely different and went on this huge tangent. I ended up just kind of opening up a new project file and playing about with different sound design ideas, because I was trying to figure out what I wanted the drop to sound like later on in the song. Because the original song idea I had these really dark cellos and stuff at the very beginning. I wanted it to sound super dark, but I didn't really know where I wanted the song to go later on. So I was like, I'm gonna go and like play with some ideas. And I ended up inadvertently kind of creating the second drop of Welcome Back to Earth. And I was like, actually, I kind of like this, and I don't think it matches that original idea I had. So let's just follow this and see where it goes. As for the theme of the lyrics, I never like to go too deep into the things I write about, because I like to write things that have personal relevance to my life. Like, I don't, you know, I'm not just writing songs about sort of arbitrary ideas. They're things that I'm actually expressing. And so I don't like to get too in depth about what it is that has happened or is happening in my life that makes me write about these sorts of things. But the concept lyrically was kind of supposed to be this sense of when someone decides that the grass is greener elsewhere and later realizes it's not, and you're sort of like, well, I told you. Someone asked, how do you start your songwriting process? This is an interesting question, because the way that I usually go through my songwriting process is completely opposite to what I did for Welcome Back to Earth. So usually I start off, I'm at the piano, I really start with things like harmony. Harmony construction is generally my main thing. So I'm coming up with chord sequences and stuff like that. Sometimes there'll be ideas where, like a music theory idea where I'm like, I want to incorporate that into my song. For example, when I wrote California, my previous single, I knew I wanted to use a passing 6/4 sequence in my song. Like, that was just a flat out, like, I'm gonna do that. So I like to build around like a harmonic idea, and then I'll generally stand at the piano, play about with ideas. I'll start writing, either a chorus will come to mind, or I'll start writing a first verse, or I'll have a melody for a verse, and then I sort of go from there. But with this song, like I said, I sort of did this sound design and was coming up with these ideas for drops in a project file. And I kind of got to this point where I had this fully fleshed out idea for a drop of a song, and I'm like, well, shit, I have to write a song around this now. So there are a lot of songs that I have written and songs that I haven't released where it's like I go through my usual way of songwriting, which is I have the idea for the song and I sit and I start to write it at the piano. I heard someone say once, I think it was Marion, who said, if you're a songwriter, you either do it with a piano or you do it with a guitar. Like, you're either a piano guy or you're a guitar guy. And I am definitely a piano songwriter. I do not play the guitar. And that's how I've always done it. But this song was just completely backwards. I remember trying to write the verse and just being like, okay, I've got to like come up with an idea for how the verse is even going to be introduced. And then I was sat here at my desk writing it, whereas usually you can't even see my piano, but usually I'm at the piano over there and I'm standing and I have a pen, a ballpoint pen that sits on that piano permanently, because I always forget to bring them over. Someone said, what program do you use? The digital audio workstation that I use is FL Studio, but I also use Audacity a lot as well, actually, in my production process. Someone said, how has your process changed since making California? That is a very interesting question, because one thing that I'm quite proud of with Welcome Back to Earth is I think that it was mixed a lot better than California was. And to be honest with you, by the time I put out California, I didn't actually like the song that much, which I think was partially because I had to listen to it for so long. I worked on that song for over 4 months, and I had been very on and off with it, whereas with Welcome Back to Earth, I had been a lot more deliberate with the time that I spent on it. And so I think with California, there were certain parts of it where I sort of like lapsed in judgment or effort a little bit, because, you know, if I haven't touched it for 2.5 weeks and I've forgotten that I've made this mental note that I need to mix this part of it a certain way, and I just kind of wanted it out of the way. I would say that I learned a lot from the way that I mixed the vocals in California, and actually I mixed the vocals in Welcome Back to Earth very differently, but I wouldn't have been able to mix them differently in Welcome Back to Earth if I hadn't have had the experience of mixing them in California and just kind of learning the sort of the range of what I could do with my vocals and how I could make them sound. I think I also learned a lot about the art of simplicity when it comes to sound design in like the bass and the drops and stuff like that, because California had a really, really complex drop, which I like the initial idea of. I think the execution could have been better, whereas in Welcome Back to Earth, it's very simple but very specific, and the way that I use different filters and especially stereo expansion and like automate those things on the bass is what made it, you know, have extra complexity while also being a very simple thing. Do you struggle to come up with melodies? Actually, no. So, like I said, I generally write music based around harmony. So, harmony construction is my whole vibe. I've spent so much time in the past studying different standard chord sequences and stuff like that. So this is my music notebook. It's got a little neon on it from Valorant. So, like, I've gone, for example, and studied, like, songs I like to find what their chord sequences are. Chord sequences, that is really my thing. So I am a big harmony person. And I think that when you build a song, or at least in my experience, when you build a song based on these are the kind of like chord sequences I want to be happening, this is the sort of harmony construction I want, oftentimes a melody just sort of falls out. Like, I'll be playing this shit on the piano and we'll be like, boom, 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 and I'll be like, wow, that sounds so cool. And then the melody will just come to mind. And usually, once I've written a melody, I kind of stick with it. I very rarely change a melody that much after I've come up with the initial melody. But generally, no, I don't find melodies hard to write at all, because I find they just sort of fall out. Someone said, what inspired you to make music? And I think, just judging by the way they worded it, this meant when I first originally started and ever got into it. So the funny thing is, a lot of people online don't necessarily know me for music, which is totally fair enough, but I actually have quite a big background in music. I taught myself to read music when I was about 5 or 6. I was very young when I taught myself how to read music. And I played like the flute for a bit when I was a child, not a super long time, but I was kind of always around music. We had pianos at home, and I never formally learned how to play the piano, but I would spend a lot of time just sat at the piano at home. And because I knew how to read music and I knew what all the keys on the piano were, I kind of just sort of like figured stuff out. And so I was serviceable on the piano enough to use it for other things. I first got an interest in producing music when I was about 13 or 14. And I've thought about this recently because I was trying to remember what it was that made me want to do it in the first place. And I think it was because I wanted to be able to write my own Vocaloid music. I wanted to be like Sam Free. And if you know who Sam Free is, he was a legend. Rest in peace. I also listened to a lot of trance music when I was that age. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to be like, well, back then Tiesto was a trance producer. He's obviously not anymore. I very casually produced music like all throughout my teens. Like I used the same program and I just kind of did stuff for fun here and there. It's not really until literally last year that I was like, okay, I'm gonna actually try and like take this seriously. And like I still had a huge learning curve of things I had not yet learned because I had been doing it so casually. If you've been following me since the time that I was working in Rainbow Six, like you may even know I used to put out a lot of music where I would flip Rainbow Six themes and like make them into dance tracks in the desperate hope that Ubisoft would want to collaborate with me, which they never did. Someone said, what challenges did you face making the music video for Welcome Back to Earth? That's a really good question because I did that whole thing on my own. So there were obviously mental challenges from the perspective of being like, am I just gonna produce something that's total shit? Am I just wasting my time doing something that's so amateur and so bootleg? And I was like, what can I do? Like, what do I have available to me considering the fact that I don't have a camera operator, it's just me and a tripod? What like outfits do I have? What can I do with scenes? Like, what do I have available so it doesn't just look like I'm in my flat? And so I think just kind of trying to be creative about the way that I thought about that. I was like, oh, how am I gonna like bring about the like a cool sort of otherworldliness of this song when all I have is like my apartment? Yeah, I mean, that was definitely hard, but also worth it. Like, I'm glad that I did it, and people have been really nice about it. I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying Welcome Back to Earth. It's been out for like a week now, or a week tonight, not even a week yet. And I still just get so many lovely messages about it. I've been checking my Spotify for artist profile and just seeing that it's doing so well. And I'm so early into this journey as well that obviously in my head, I'm like, oh my God, what if I'm not good enough? What if like, you know, all these imposter syndrome things. And so to have people showing their love for it so much is really nice, especially as I have an audience who has been established because they're fans of other work that I do. To be open to this endeavor of mine, I appreciate that so much, and I'm just so glad that people are enjoying it. So keep streaming Welcome Back to Earth. It means a hell of a lot to me. I've already started working on the next song, but that's all for now. And and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much. I love you. Mwah. Mwah. Goodbye.